I don't usually cover current events because there's just too much going on, and I want you to concentrate on the material for the class. But there's a lot going on with the Supreme Court, so I want to just give you an overview of what's going on. Prior to this week, this was the Supreme Court, the 9 justices, Chief Justice in the middle, and then it goes by seniority. So Clarence Thomas is the longest serving justice, appointed by George H.W. Bush, then Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away just the other day, then Breyer, Alito, Elena Kagan, Sotomayor, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. So the current court is this for liberals and 5 conservatives, with the Chief Justice, John Roberts. So a 5-4 conservative bent. Let's go back historically, because there's a lot of talk right now about what happened the last time someone died in a presidential year. This was the court, again, by seniority. So Chief Justice Roberts was there. Scalia was the longest serving justice, appointed by Reagan. Then Kennedy, Clarence Thomas, the rest should seem familiar, as everybody just moves over a seat when their seniority goes up. The exception to that is Chief Justice Roberts, who has the center seat by being the Chief Justice and is the most senior member even on his first day. So that was the court then. If you notice, we have 2 openings to discuss before we get to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. So in February of 2016, the last year we had a presidential election, Antonin Scalia died. And the president nominated Merrick Garland to replace him. And, just to go through the process, the Constitution says that the president nominates, and then the Senate confirms those nominees to be on the Supreme Court. So Obama did his part, and we did not have a judiciary hearing or a full Senate vote. And the reason for that is because the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, refused to hold those hearings in the United States Senate. So Mitch McConnell took the position, and I'm sure if you're watching the news, you've heard that McConnell at that point refused to fill the position. And what he said was that it was during a presidential election year, and the American people should have a voice in the selection of the next Supreme Court justice by choosing the president, and then the president would fill that vacancy. And that is indeed what happened. Merrick Garland never got a confirmation hearing. He never got a vote. The Democrats were clearly upset about that. The Republicans stood firm. And so in January 2017, when Donald Trump was inaugurated, they then started this process, and the president confirmed not Merrick Garland, but Neil Gorsuch. There was a Senate confirmation hearing and a full Senate vote where 54 senators voted. And so Neil Gorsuch, this is him at his hearing, then was confirmed with 3 Democrats. Not very many, but 3 Democrats doing that. So a lot of this this talk in the media is going back to this example of what happened, and if that should be the precedent that the Republicans still follow when it's a liberal justice that has unfortunately died. Regardless of politics, it's always very sad when someone dies. So the other opening, June 2018, Anthony Kennedy stepped down, and somewhat unexpectedly stepped down. And the reason that is controversial is because there's a lot of question about why he stepped down when he did. His son is involved with Deutsche Bank, which is the moneylender to Donald Trump. So we still don't really know exactly what happened here, and I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some deeper conversations that were had, because the person chosen to replace Kennedy was his former clerk, who he very much supported and wanted. Kennedy wanted Kavanaugh nominated, and so there's some question of if there were backroom conversations about I'll step down if you will protect my son, the moneylender, from the person who decided to approve those loans from Deutsche Bank that's being investigated, and Anthony Kennedy's son may still be implicated. And so is there a request for a pardon in exchange for stepping down and allowing Trump to nominate someone? And so we don't know. We have no idea if that's true or not. Those are not conversations we have access to. So Kavanaugh was nominated by Trump, and then, if you remember, the news at that point ran into some problems because was accused of sexual misconduct by Christine Blasey Ford. So inevitably, what happened was Kavanaugh was confirmed anyway. It was a contentious confirmation hearing. There were lots of people that didn't want him to be confirmed as a result of those allegations by Ford and others of sexual misconduct. But he was, by a much more narrow vote, confirmed. And so Kavanaugh is also on the Supreme Court with Neil Gorsuch. So that catches us up to September 18th. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. It was her fifth battle with cancer, and she died at age 87. So that then leaves an opening, 45 days before the election. So Mitch McConnell immediately that day said, we will replace Ginsburg with Trump's pick. Trump announced that he would be nominating someone, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dying wish, her granddaughter released, was that, to quote, "My fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed," in the days leading up to her death. So the question now is, will the Senate actually confirm? Will they rely on that precedent in 2016 to wait for an election? And that opening was in February, which certainly was longer than opening in September. Reporters are obviously asking the United States senators, would they even vote to confirm a justice? So Senator Collins in Maine, Alaska's Lisa Murkowski are two that have said in the past that they would not. So we'll get those updates. And again, to go back to 2016, if you look, there are many, many, many senators on the Republican side who agreed with Mitch McConnell, said we shouldn't be. So Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, Tom Tillis, who's facing a really tough Senate race, said that they wouldn't. Chuck Grassley and Richard Burr went down. Now, clearly, there are also statements on the Democratic side that I could show you that say we have to. And so clearly the politics of this is that folks have switched sides. But it is going to be up to the Republican senators that I'm showing you these quotes of to whether or not they would even vote for a confirmation this close to the election. So many, many, many statements from these Republican senators about that. And to look at historical precedent, there's only two justices, one in 1956 and one in 1864, that died closer to an election than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And if you look, when somebody dies in January, they have nominated and confirmed. February, the confirmation was not, it was held up. And so even though Obama nominated, it was not. but somebody who died in March was, somebody who died in June was, but no one who's died in, August or September or October has been replaced. That just gives you historical precedent. Again, that's not the law. The law is silent. The Constitution does not have a time stamp or a deadline. One thing that I'm not seeing a lot of is just the congressional calendar. If you look at when the Senate is actually in session, which is here in the red, this is probably this week might be when, so the purple or the red is when the House and the House is in session in blue, the Senate in red, and in purple they're both. So the Senate is meeting this week, and then a little in October, but then they're out so that the senators can go back for Election Day. So we're really only talking about a few days of them being in session to hold a hearing. So I don't know if would Mitch McConnell require that all those senators who are trying to campaign for re-election stay in D.C. So the Senate, a Republican majority, so this means that the two senators from California are Democrats, so Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein are Democrats, but the two senators from Texas are Republicans. So this kind of gives you an idea of the breakdown of the Republican and Democratic. There are two independent senators, and then everybody else is either a Republican or a Democrat. And the two independents vote with the Democrats most often, so you'll sometimes see that it's a 53-47 split. So the Republicans hold out of a Senate that's 100. You need a majority, so 51, and the Republicans have 53. So it would take 4 senators on the Republican side to say that they would not vote for the confirmation hearing. Not whether they would support or not support, just saying they would not vote for that. So it's complicated by this election. The Senate, 100 seats, are divided into 3 classes that are up for election. So it's 6-year terms, but only a third of them are on the ballot. So these are the races, and so the green colored maps, you can see the polling. The states in darker gray don't have polls yet, but the states, California doesn't have an election, Nevada doesn't have an election. So we can start to see which of the Senate seats are even on the ballot. And some of the races are quite tight. In Arizona, John McCain died, and so this is McSally is incumbent but has to face a special election. So Arizona normally would not have an election this cycle, but they will because it's a short-term election. And so you can start to see that Maine, North Carolina, Colorado, and Arizona all are held by Republicans, and this poll is saying that these are the most likely to switch. Now, this is a percentage chance, not how much they would win by, but 538 does polling models to say that they have a very good chance of flipping those seats. And then something like Tennessee, there's almost no chance. So if you look at a state like Arizona, it's Martha McSally, the incumbent, versus Mark Kelly, who's not only married to the Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, but also an astronaut, so he's polling very well. Maine, with Susan Collins running for re-election, is a tight race. North Carolina, which you wouldn't expect to be a tight race, but Tom Tillis is facing a tight race. Colorado, with Cory Gardner running as an incumbent, a tight race. So those senators may be less likely to. When we look at this current court, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg is replaced, it's why so many people are worried, a Trump appointee would most likely, not a guarantee, but almost certainly would be a conservative, and we'll talk more about that later when we know who the nominees are. But just some of the names, again, the president may nominate any minute now, and by the time you're watching this may have already. So we'll see if the news reporters are correct that these are kind of the front runners. And so on the Federalist Society website, you can look up these profiles to see who they are and what they're doing, and why they make a number of progressives, liberals, nervous. A number of these candidates are conservative on a number of issues.